Welcome to Chapter 7. So, at the end of Chapter 6, or in all of Chapter 6 yesterday or the last 2 days, was Ghost's first practice after stealing the shoes. So, first he just kind of had practice in them. He tried to sneak them in so nobody would really notice. The kids gave him some compliments. Coach gave him a funny look. And then in yesterday's section, the coach was giving him the ride home in the cab, and he asked him about them. And Ghost lied, said his mom bought them. And Ghost even said himself he couldn't believe he was doing that. He's not really the kind of kid who lies. And he said he felt like there was no way Coach believed him, but he didn't say anything. So that's where we're at now. And we're actually kind of cruising in this book. I didn't even realize it. You notice down here there's 180 pages. We've read 110, so I would guess by the end of next week we'll be done. World record for the best Friday ever after the worst Wednesday and Thursday. This is chapter 7, by the way. Friday means two things. The first is that it's the last day before I can take 2 days off school. I like to think of it as a non-altercation suspension. Plus, the weekend was when me and Ma actually did stuff, and not just watch movies and avoid homework, because she didn't work on weekends and took early morning online classes to get them out of the way. And when she was done, we would clean house. I was in charge of the living room. Ma would give me her version of a haircut. She always got most of it evening, then give herself one. And then we would go over to my Aunt Sophie's house. Aunt Sophie is my mom's younger sister, and she's like the coolest lady ever. She has a tattoo on her arm that says Sweetie Pie that I never asked about, but I always stared at just because I can't wait to get one. But mine ain't gonna say nothing like that. Mine's is gonna say world's greatest, or of course, ghost. But anyway, on the weekends, Aunt Sophie and my mom sit around and play cards and crack jokes and eat corn chips and cheese dip and drink beer. And sometimes they let me and King, Aunt Sophie's son, sit with them and play. Yes, we can play. Me and King learned how to play spades and tonk when we were real young. It's a thing in our family, a serious thing. And yes, his real name is King. I think the sisters just wanted to give us royal names, so yeah. All I had to do was get through Friday without any problems, and I was good to go for the weekend. The other thing about Friday, which I didn't know until Thursday, is that Coach gives everybody the day off. No practice. And then, of course, since this was the first Friday of the season, Coach was taking the newbies out for dinner. After 2.5 days of school, after 2 half days of school, which technically equals 1 full day, I'm happy to say that school went pretty smooth on Friday. Brandon Simmons was back, and even though I had on my regular dusty butt shoes, though fancy ones were for track only, Brandon didn't have too much to say to me. I saw him just before first period, and he walked right past me and Dre. I saw some of the other kids snickering at him as he passed, but I told them all to chill. I don't know why, because he totally deserved to be roasted. But I guess I kind of felt bad for the dude. I've been there. I can't believe you're giving this clown a pass, Dre said. It was almost like he had a year's worth of laughs stored up, waiting to unload them on Brandon. Everybody did. But I just couldn't let it happen. Funny thing was, when I saw Shamika in Mr. Hollow's class, she apologized to me about everything that went on in class the day before. And that, my friends, is what they call karma. Plus, like I said, she was a cool girl anyway. I've got to stop here and just, as your teacher, talk for a moment. The previous day when Shamika laughed at him, he was so embarrassed and so angry that he walked out of school, and he ultimately stole shoes. Big mistake. But then the next day it turns out Shamika apologizes. And so what that means to me is A, clearly Shamika's a good kid, right? Like no one just, and she wasn't even mean to him. She just couldn't stop laughing. But you don't like go a whole 24 hours and then apologize if you're not a good kid. That means it's like, it was sitting with her. She didn't like how it felt. So you learn a lot about Shamika there. But the thing that also reminds me is that even though she apologized, even though she proved she's a good kid, her laughing at Castle really already had its consequence, didn't it? She can't turn that back. So you really have to be careful of like what you say to people, what you do to people. But then what I would say to Castle as his teacher is, yo man, you gotta like take some breaths. You can't react right away. You can't let your emotions charge you like that, right? You got taking some breaths, get a drink of water before you just, fly. What they say is like fly off the handle and make a decision. But what a wonderful sequence there of kids just trying to learn who they are. All right, sorry that I. Right. At lunch, she even ate with me, Red and Dre, and told us about every story about the time she cut things just because she was feeling a little guilty. There was one time I cut my hair. Man, that was crazy. Just straight up started hacking it off like a maniac just because it was hot and my hair was on my neck, she said first, just before taking a bite of her burger. Then, in the midst of chewing, continued, and another time, I cut a pair of jeans into shorts while I still had them on. That was not smart. Still got the scars on my legs. And then she erupted into laughter, just like she did in class. But this time, she was the butt of her own joke. And even though me, Dre, and Red didn't really find it that funny, we couldn't help but laugh too because, well, that's what her laugh makes you do. Before I knew it, school was over and I went on my usual walk home. I mean, Coach wasn't coming until later, so I figured there was no rush. So I went to Mr. Charles's store. Let me guess, sunflower seeds, Mr. Charles said. He turned the little TV down as usual. Let me guess, $1, I said, slapping my money on the counter. I grabbed the bag. You okay, son? Mr. Charles asked. Yeah, why? Oh, all that stuff happened yesterday with you being teased, and then you came here and got. He stopped short. I was starting to feel a little annoyed that he even brought it up, because I was definitely trying to forget about it all, especially that last part, the stockroom part. Talk about weird. Not that I hadn't thought about it. I mean, how could I not? But every time I see my father's face or the sound of his angry voice or the sound of the gun cocking popped into my mind, I would just shake it out of my head by thinking about my bullets, the silver bullets. But you just can't be mad at old James Brown, faced man like Mr. Charles. You just can't. Sorry about that. Yeah, man, I assured him. I'm cool. I'm actually in a good mood. Oh, yeah? He asked. I used my teeth to rip open the corner of the bag. Yep. Got a dinner thing I'm going to tonight for my track team, I said, all proud. Track team? Mr. Charles asked, now turning the TV down even more. You're on a track team, Castle? Yes, sir, I started to say. But it's hard to talk and get a seed out of the shell at the same time, so I waited till I got it done, then continued. Remember I told you yesterday? You did? Mr. Charles looked puzzled. The old brain's getting wonky these days, he said. Sorry, son. It's cool. I tapped the bag in my palm to get a few more seeds out. So yeah, I'm on a team called the Defenders, one of the best teams in the city. I didn't know you were an athlete. Mr. Charles seemed impressed. Well, I am. A pretty good one, too. I bragged, tossing the seeds in my mouth, then casually slapping my hand against my thigh to brush the salt off. A shock of soreness shot down to my knee, a painful reminder that I was definitely an athlete. Ugh. Mr. Charles twisted the top off a cranberry juice and took a sip. I believe you. I told you, kid, you're one of the world's greatest. Got that right, I said, now spinning shells in my hand. One of the world's greatest. After I left the store, I headed to stop 2, the bus stop. I took a seat next to an older woman. She was doing a crossword puzzle and humming a song I didn't recognize. She might have been making it up. Didn't sound bad, though. Across the street, at the gym were all the people working out. The Walking Dead. Ha! That's what they look like. Anyway, I hung out there for a little while before moving on. When I got to Martin Luther King Park, I looked down at the track and there wasn't nobody there except a man jogging with his dog. But nobody else. No real runners. After that, there was no place else to go but home, and I wasn't ready to go there yet. So I went to the basketball court. At the court, as usual, all the older guys were running fives for cash. I knew some of them just because they were always there playing, like Pop, who was probably in his 20s or something like that. I don't even think he was anybody's dad, but everybody called him Pop anyway. He was a short dude with crazy handles and a mean jumper. He was one of those guys who could do all the tricks and stuff, shake you right out your socks like it was nothing. And Sicko was there too. But luckily for me, he didn't have his crazy dog with him. Sicko wasn't really that good at basketball, but he was super rough. He probably should have been a football player or a wrestler. Big James was there too. He was like the best player ever to me. He looked like he really played pro ball, 6 feet something, all muscle. People always said Big James played college ball but never went pro. I never knew what he did for a living. All I knew was that he was always at the court, dominating the game, taking everybody's money. So I guess basketball was what he did for a living after all. Besides the Hoopers, there were a whole bunch of other people on the court, just hanging out. Girls, some were the girlfriends of the guys playing, and others wanted to be the girlfriends of the guys playing. And junkies. They'd just be zombied out, roaming around the outside of the court. So junkies are people that are addicted to drugs, okay? And you get a little glimpse of where Ghost lives, the fact that, he has to walk by this, okay? And junkies. They'd just be zombied out, roaming around the outside of the court. They knew better than to mess up the game. They'd just walk along the out of bounds line like it was a tightrope, waiting for Goose. Goose was the dope man, who also happened to be a pretty good ball player. Super flashy, but an all around nice guy. Well, except for the fact that he sold drugs. The court was where he served in more than one way. I chilled there for a while, watching Sicko push everybody around until what always happened. A fight, as usual. Stupid Sicko pushed the wrong guy, a guy I didn't know, and that guy pushed Sicko back, and then Pop got into it, and then Big James, then Big James's girl, and then some other girl, and then a junkie started howling like a wolf, and then I was out. By the time I made it home, I had only a little bit of time to kill before Coach picked me up. Just enough time to wash up, or as my mom says, splash some water on my hot spots, throw on some clean clothes, and give myself 2 spritzes of perfume. It was Ma's, and it smelled like flowers, but hey, so what? When Coach showed up, he hit the horn a few times, and when I didn't come right out, he hit it a few more times. So for today's response, I want to look at this part from earlier in the chapter when it's Friday and he gets to school. And here, I'm happy to say that school went pretty smooth on Friday. Brandon Simmons was back, and even though I had on my regular dusty butt shoes, the fancy ones were for track only. Brandon didn't have too much to say to me. I saw him just before first period, and he walked right past me and Dre. I saw some of the other kids snickering at him as he passed, but I told them all to chill. I don't know why, because he totally deserved to be roasted, but I guess I kind of felt kind of bad for the dude. I've been there. I can't believe you're giving this clown a pass, Dre said. It was almost like he had a year's worth of laughs stored up, waiting to unload them on Brandon. Everybody did, but I just couldn't let it happen. So what I'm wondering is, why did he tell everyone to chill? Why didn't he roast Brandon Simmons? So that's what your response is. Why didn't Ghost roast Brandon Simmons? This kid has been bullying Ghost for years, and this was his chance to really be on top and make fun of him for a change. Instead, he just ignored him. I'm also going to add, he told everyone to chill. Why? So I'm curious, why did he do this? This was his chance to be on top of a lifelong bully. And then, what does that say about Ghost as a person? Okay. All right. Thank you for joining the Read Aloud. I know today was a long one, but like I said, we're making great progress in the book. And I'm thinking actually we might finish by the middle of next week. All right.